In going through all of these college football previews, we're reminded that there are some really talented football players in the ACC, but are these the best of the best?
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. On this episode, we will talk about Pro Football Focus's 4 most underrated teams heading into this season, 2 of which are in the ACC. I want to discuss the attitude that Florida State head coach Mike Norvell has towards conference realignment and a lot of these other distractions, let's just call it what they are, that happen in college football these days. But Kenton, digging back through the Phil Steele College Football Magazine, which to me, again, this is one of the great preseason resources. It's been for nearly 30 years, along with Athlon and Lindy's. I love these college football preview magazines. Tell me if you agree with his first team all ACC selections. So we'll start with the quarterback position. Not too surprising. He went with Miami's Cam Ward as first team all ACC quarterback. You know, Ward, out of all the quarterbacks in the conference, he put up the biggest numbers last year. Now, not against the best defenses in the Pac-12, but Ward put up monster numbers last season with 3,735 passing yards, 25 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. And, you know, obviously to claim that first team spot beats out the likes of the Grayson McCalls and the DJ Weungulalays and the Tyler Shucks of the world.
I will say that he rightfully deserves this, and this is not a backhanded compliment. This is just the reality of the situation. If he were in a different year, the race may have looked differently in terms of who is the first team guy. You know, if we're looking at the years with Devin Leary, Kenny Pickett, TVD, before we knew he couldn't read zone defenses and all that, we're looking at a very different situation. With the situation as it is right now, I think the best returner of all of the ACC quarterbacks in terms of guys who played in ACC last year, probably Thomas Castellanos. And so if you're arguing who's the better of the two, it's not really close. It's not particularly close. I think they're both dynamic runners. But Cam Ward, in terms of what he can do through the air, looks a little bit next level in comparison to Castellanos. So I'm completely fine with Cam being first team.
You know, and before we get to first team at other positions, I do want to go through his second, third, and fourth teamers at quarterback because
let's do it.
His list is pretty interesting. You know what? Honestly, this name should have come out of my mouth before maybe some of the others that I mentioned, but he's got Kyron Drones for Virginia Tech, second team All ACC. He's got Haynes King at Georgia Tech, third team, and he's got Grayson McCall at NC State, fourth team. And obviously there are going to be some fan bases that feel hard done by that. Where's DJU? Where's Tyler Shuck, who comes into Louisville with some expectations? But interesting to go with Kyron Drones, second team.
I think Kyron Drones has proven it, though. I think he's proven to be that type of player. He is not – it's not a matter of, Virginia Tech won some games where he just was kind of along for the ride. No. If he was along for the ride, Virginia Tech lost, period. That's all there is to it. Either they lost or they were playing Island of Misfit Toys Community College. Because the reality is Kyron Drones is the engine that drives that car, period. There's no way around that. I saw it firsthand when it looked like NC State was going to run away with it. Then all of a sudden, Kyron Drones says, not so fast, my friend, and starts finding open receivers everywhere. I think he's a truly special talent as well. He's another one of those dual threat guys that he can give it to you any way you want. He can give it to you on the ground. He combines with Byshaw too to make a hell of a read option up there. And when it comes to passing, again, Virginia Tech does not have a receiving core that I think of like, man, these are world beaters, especially with Ali Jennings being banged up for most of last year. And yet, he still found a way to put up good passing numbers as well. So I have no problem with him as second team.
So we go through the other positions. Steele has 2 first-team running backs. That's the way a lot of people do their They're all conference teams. He's got Miami's Damien Martinez and North Carolina's Amarian Hampton. I'm not necessarily going to argue with either of those two selections. The other guy who I'm thinking, man, there was definitely a battle for that. One of those spots, I believe, is Jaden Ott from Cal.
Yeah,
Could have
Ott
really been
definitely.
in that conversation.
Absolutely. Ott is a special guy. But these two, you're looking at Martinez, who was undoubtedly, I mean, and I mean this now, how many power backs in the Power 5 would you take over him right now? How many guys that you know? I would say Ollie Gordon is one you would take over, but Ollie Gordon is more of a one cutback than a true power back that you think of like, I'm heavy, I lean on you. During the game, I get heavier, I get bigger, I get stronger. You know, not too many. So I absolutely get that. And then Hampton, there was a play for the Rams back when Marshall Faulk was playing where Dick Vermeil said, we didn't block anybody. We didn't block anybody, and he got it done. There were a lot of plays like that for Hampton. With all due respect to North Carolina's offensive line, he was making chicken salad out of chicken scratch many a time, and he has to be given respect for that because if you gave him a crease this big, it was like, how did he find that hole? What happened? So, as much as it pains my soul to give a Dirty Foot Clubber proper due, he was a very special talent there that, again, he kind of alleviated some of the pressure off of Drake May during the season.
So Steele has 3 first-team All-ACC wide receivers. Louisville's Colin Lacey. He's got NC State's Kevin Concepcion. He's got Miami's Xavier Restrepo. I don't have too many arguments with that list. I would say a guy that plays for a team that I don't think is going to be very good this year, who may make a case though, is Elick Iomanor from Stanford. I never know if I'm saying his name correctly because the commentators say it all different ways, but Iomanor is one. That dude's going to put up numbers. I don't think Stanford's going to be very good, but that dude's going to put up numbers.
Absolutely. And the only question for him is going to be how good is your quarterback play. But the three guys that we have in here, I can see it only from a standpoint of all 3 of them have dominated the ACC previously. All 3 of those guys, Kevin Concepcion was it. But he was their first, their last, their everything in terms of NC State's wide receiving core, and yet he did it well. You look at the other 2 as well, and you cannot say to yourself, Xavier Restrepo was phenomenal despite up and down quarterback play. He was phenomenal despite, different things that kind of conspired at Miami last season that had many people like, well, what is Mario Cristobal doing? Xavier Restrepo was the constant. Regardless of who the starter was, regardless of who the backup was, you knew that you had to find him. It didn't matter if he was on the slot, in the outside, you had to find him. You had to get him addressed. And the wide receiver from Louisville, I can absolutely see him as well because you think about Jamari Thrash and all that he was to that offense, but this young man did some special things too. He was the reason that we thought of Jack Plummer, he may be a Power 5 quarterback, but we all know he wasn't. We all watched the film. We all knew he wasn't. It was because the weapons around him made him look that way. And this young man, it definitely belongs to nod in that type of realm.
Yeah, I have the privilege of being able to cover Xavier Restrepo, and that I don't know of too many players, and I've covered a lot of great ones over the years. I don't know of too many guys who work as hard or harder than X, as we call him. And when he and Tyler Van Dyke were very close friends, like they were roommates and like best friends. So like people thought when Van Dyke left, like, oh, is he going to get targeted this much? Or I guess that's still yet to be seen in games, but I covered almost every spring practice, Kenton, and Restrepo was always open and Cam Ward was always finding that dude. So if spring football, which it can be, is any indication, I think Restrepo is going to have a monster year coming up. I'll go through. I don't think people want to hear us break down the offensive line too much. So let me go through these real quick. We'll get to the defense here on the other side, but the first team offensive line on Phil Steele's preseason list, Justin Osborne, center from SMU, Logan Taylor, guard from Boston College, Michael Gonzalez, guard from Louisville, Blake Miller, offensive tackle from Clemson, and Darius Washington, offensive tackle from Florida State. I want to talk about the defense on the other side because I think they did get a lot of things right here. Plus, I appreciated the outlook that Florida State head coach Mike Norvell has on conference realignment and a lot of the other distractions out there. So, my friends, we're only getting started. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. And folks, I know you're only getting started with Game Time. You're looking for tickets for the upcoming sporting event. Maybe you're going to the NBA Finals. Maybe you're down here in South Florida going to the Stanley Cup Finals. You're over in Edmonton. You're going to be catching games 3 and 4. Guys, incredible deals, including the best last-minute deals, are at Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And guys, it doesn't have to be sporting events, comedy shows, concerts. I bought musical theater tickets on Game Time before. The zone deals are amazing. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. The all-in pricing. Guys, I don't know how I lived without this, because you get your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Alex Donno alongside Kenton Gibbs. All right, so Kenton, Phil Steele preview, first team All ACC defense. His defensive ends, I'm not going to argue with. He's got our guy Ashton Gelati from Louisville, who I think had double-digit sacks last year at one edge spot, and he's got Miami's Ruben Bain at the other edge, who's heading into his sophomore year after putting up 7.5 sacks and 12.5 TFL last year as a freshman. Not saying those are the only good defensive ends in the conference, but those were certainly the first two that popped into my brain.
If you watch the film on either one of these guys and decide that they're not first team, you believe somebody else in this conference is going to be a top 5 overall draft pick next year. That's just the reality. And I'm sorry to tell you, unfortunately, we don't have a guy like that in the conference right now. Bain is an absolute freak of nature. He is bendy. He is strong. He knows how to – he is a guy that he's beyond his years in terms of his pass rush bag as a true freshman coming in with multiple moves. You know what I mean? It's something to see. The only thing that I would like to see out of him, a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more ability to beat guys cleanly around the edge. He's amazing at converting speed to power. I just love to see him get a little bit better at that get off and work guys around that edge a little bit better, because it sets up all of those counters and all that power that he comes with when he rushes. Gelati, on the other hand, that's a savvy veteran. And not only is he a savvy veteran, his team uses him like it. Up and down the line, they find a weak link, and they put Ashton over him because he can rush from multiple different positions. He is a guy that plans his work and works his plan. You can see the development in his game and in his pass rush bag from his, I'd say, sophomore year or so to now. It's night and day. Before, he used to win with all effort, all heart. Now he's starting to be a guy that you can see. He is consistently getting better with that double hand swipe. He is consistently developing that club rip. And I even saw him hit a couple hump moves last year where you think of a guy his size and you're like, how is he humping guys on pass? But it's an impressive thing to see Ashton Gelati be the refined pass rusher that he is, which, again, the motor is unstoppable, indomitable. You combine that with the moves, he's something special.
For the defensive tackles, first team All ACC, according to Phil Steele. I'm a little surprised by the Miami player he selected. I hope he's right, but he's got Joshua Farmer from Florida State, not that surprising, and he's got Simeon Barrow from Miami in the other spot. Now, full disclosure, Simeon, he goes to the school now that I cover, but I don't really know Simeon because he arrived after spring football, so I've not had a chance to watch him practice. I do know he was an instrumental part of Michigan State's defense for the past 4 years. I don't think he was never an all Big Ten first team selection. I think he made third team before. Yeah. So yeah. And again, I hope to see it with my own eyes once they start fall practices, but Phil Steele is bullish on Barrow, and obviously he's bullish on Farmer at Florida State.
Farmer, I understand. Farmer was very clearly the next in line behind Braden Fisk. He was clearly the next one in a long, storied tradition of Florida State defensive linemen. I get it. He's shown a little bit of everything. I'd like to see him anchor down against double teams a little bit better, but he's shown a lot of pass rush juice from the interior and all that good stuff. Hey, I get you. The thing I don't understand, Barrow, why? This is not a conference that's lacking for quality defensive tackles. Right. Yeah. I mean, with all due respect, you have C.J. Clark, who looked phenomenal at NC State at times last year, who's still in the conference at Miami, and you had his backup, who was so good. It's rare to hear fans calling for a defensive tackle, especially a defensive tackle that's playing well, to get replaced. Cleveland was so good. People were saying, is there a way we can get him and Clark on the field at the same time? We got to find a way. And I agree, because Brandon Cleveland was phenomenal. At times, he was flatly unblockable last year, which you only ask yourself, can he keep at that level with a higher snap count, which Barrow has proven Cleveland has not. But other than that, I don't really understand how you give a newcomer who's coming into a team at the point of your past spring ball the nod for first team and not guys who have been here and proven it. But, I mean, hey, like you said, if you're a Miami fan, Phil Steele's got some faith in Miami. He's always had faith in Miami, which sometimes has not worked out well for him. We'll see how it works out this time.
Makes me wonder if this dude's the jinx. If the last 20 years are all Phil's fault.
It's the Steele effect, baby. It's the Steele effect.
The Steele effect. Oh man! And so for his linebackers, he's got Kyman Rucker from North Carolina, Barrett Carter from Clemson, and Marlo. Oh, he's actually got 4 linebackers: Marlo Wax from Syracuse and Kiko Maui Noah from Miami. And yeah, I mean, Kiko is that dude's a player. No question in my mind.
Here's the only thing I'll say about this. Kyman Rucker is not a linebacker in my mind. I'm sorry to tell y'all, the young man is 265 pounds and plays attached to the line of scrimmage more so than off. He's always going downhill, rarely ever dropping back. Let's be honest with ourselves here. But he is a phenomenal player. He is a phenomenal pass rusher. He is a pass rush specialist supreme, that the likes of which we have not seen a ton of in this league, or we will not see a ton of in this league this year. I don't think we have that many guys that can pass rush like him this year. So Kiko, he's a freak. He's a freak. Sideline to sideline is overused, and I don't think that quite applies to him. But I will say, hash to hash, try getting away from him. Try it. It'll be a fun little operation there. Marlo Wax, the leader of the mob, as they call themselves. Yep. I'm going to tell you something. Marlo is not only the quintessential linebacker in terms of his style of play, he is a building block that if Fran Brown can utilize, get the maximum amount out of, this team can be something special. Because when you think of Marlo, he's not just a great player. He's the first guy that we've said so far that when I think of him, his leadership comes to mind immediately. You hear the way that he speaks on the podcast. You hear the way you watch the way that Syracuse players interact with him in between plays and whenever they're on the sideline. He is by far he's not a leader on that team. He's the leader. He's the alpha dog on that squad. And Marlo is that for good reason. He not only does it by word, but by deed. He's a physical linebacker. He's a thumper that knows how to disengage. And he's getting better and better in coverage by the year. I think Marlo Wax is something special up there in Syracuse.
I like it. Defensive backs, you're going to like this because Phil Steele, he put some respect on Aiden White's name. He's got NC State's Aiden White, first team. Florida State's got, if I butcher his first name, Florida State fans will kill me. Azare Thomas, he's got Jonas Sanker from Virginia as one of the safeties, and Donovan McMillan from Pittsburgh as the other safety. So a strong group of defensive backs, and I completely understand why Miami doesn't have a guy on there because that is considered to be the question mark on Miami's side.
Let me tell you something. Aiden White getting the respect that he finally deserves. It makes me feel like Mr. Crocker from Fairly Odd Parents anytime he saw fairies. I want to jump out my skin right now. I want to get real wicked because that is a bad man in that number 3. He's something special. But I want to talk about Donovan McMillan for a second because on the defense that struggled mightily last year, he was one of, if not, well, he wasn't the only, but the only other bright spot that's transferred out of the program because he doesn't believe they could win. He's the only bright spot that they have returning. That's just an objective truth. Devonshire's going to the NFL. Their edge rusher, who was special, transferred out. He is everything to that defense. He's their last line defense, but he does it well. He does it well. He's a Narduzzi guy through and through. He's willing to put his nose in there and make a tackle. He's smart. He's heady. And in that cover 4 scheme, safeties have to be aggressive yet controlled. If a safety in cover 4 is jumping too many things, you leave your corners in bad positions. If you're sitting too far back and kind of waiting for everything to come to you, teams will kill you with dig routes all day. Don't worry, me and Donno will break down the film on that one day, baby. But the reality is cover 4 puts a lot of pressure on the safeties, and he finds ways to make the defense right, make the guys around him right very often. And I absolutely think that he deserves to be on here despite the struggles that Pittsburgh has had and probably will have this upcoming season.
All right, so when we come back, this is a reminder that players and coaches don't have control over the politics that are happening in college sports right now. You want to keep it locked right here. Alex Donno and Kenton Gibbs with you on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Hey, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. So, Kenton, obviously Florida State has probably been the most talked about college program in recent months with things that are happening, off the field, right? From the college football playoff snub to the multiple lawsuits. Okay. And we all have to remember that coaches and players have zero control over this stuff that's happening behind the scenes. So On3 Sports put out an article with some Mike Norvell quotes about, how Florida State athletics, how they're dealing with the new world for college sports, about, they can't directly ask him about the lawsuit, obviously, but I think it's implied that that's a distraction that's going on. And, he's keeping the focus within the program. He says, no, it's still about us, Norvell said. And, I said that a couple years ago, same thing last year. He says, as you go through this journey, it's just about seeing our team get better. He says, and, last year we had a great regular season championship game. Obviously, the season didn't end the way we wanted to in a couple of different ways. But, can we show up this season or next season and be a better football team? And it's like, Kent, sometimes some of my Locked On Canes listeners will be like, hey, you should ask the coaches how they feel about the ACC and conference realignment. And it's like that's the last thing on their minds. And even in the case of, in Mike Norvell's case, like his board of trustees is actually suing the ACC, but that still needs to be the last thing on his mind. And it's simple, Kenton, because, and I thought Norvell answered those questions very well, he has virtually zero control over any of this stuff. All he can do is coach football, try to make his team better, and you hope all the administrative issues take care of themselves.
As Florida State often says, all we got is all we need. And that really is the case for them, right? Inside that locker room, all they have is all they need because that's all that they can control. That's all that they can do to be the best team possible to win games, regardless of if Mike Norvell had said, hey, we hate it here, we hate this conference, we're ready to go, we're leaving tomorrow, or we love the ACC. I don't know why our chancellor, I don't know why our board of trustees is doing this. It's, we love the ACC loves us, but we're going, either one of those answers gives you a distraction, serves as something off the field, serves as something that you're thinking of something besides what's in between the lines. All he can do, all that team can do is show up on Saturdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Mondays, whenever they're asked to play and be their best selves. That's it. That's it. So I wholeheartedly agree with Norvell in terms of the politics has nothing to do with the players, has nothing to do with the coaches. You have got to go out there and do what you do, because the reality is this. Let's say Florida State is to slide back to an early Norvell or Taggart era record, right? Let's say they slide back to a 7-win season, 8-win season. How appealing are you to the Big Ten and SEC then?
Right.
how appealing are you if people feel like, that 13-0 was a fluke? They'll never be back until they get rid of Norvell. Oh, but they need private equity money to build out their stadium, and they're going to need money to leave the conference. Where are they going to get the money from to even replace this guy? Adding them in would be adding in mid. Even if a lot of people like watching mid, America loves a winner, and nobody's going to want to watch them for long. That's the reality. They got to show up, do what they do, and keep it pushing, because at the end of the day, when you give too much credit, when you give too much credence to outside distractions, it's almost like you're worshiping that problem. They have nothing to do with that. Don't worry. Focus on what you can control. Focus on, are we executing properly? Focus on, are we hitting the weights properly? Focus on, is this team detail-oriented? Focus on, I know what it takes to make an undefeated team. Are we rolling in that direction? If not, how do we get that course corrected? That's what needs to be this team's focus, not what's going on in the courts and what's the update. Because, again, court is slow and plodding and boring, which is the exact opposite of football. It is quick. It is sudden. And, well, I guess the violence is common, but that's it. That's all, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, something I want to give this the proper amount of time on tomorrow's episode. So let me tease it here, because Pro Football Focus, including a friend of mine, Max Chadwick, we should probably get him on this show soon. He's joined me on Locked On Canes a couple of times, has put out his list of the 4 most underrated teams in college football heading into next year. Just to give a background on Pro Football Focus, they try to go strictly by numbers, by analytics, right? I mean, obviously, the analytics are created by human beings, but it's not a situation where they're trying to put personal biases in. They go strictly by the numbers. And I want to break down tomorrow if SMU and Virginia Tech are, in fact, 2 of the most underrated teams heading into college football. So I definitely want to get to that on tomorrow's episode. So, guys, make sure you give us each a follow on X. You can follow Kenton Gibbs at TGIF_Kenton. You can follow me at Alex Donno. Donno spelled Donno. And we'll talk to you guys tomorrow on another episode of Locked On ACC. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.